Today, we're diving into an incredible story, a journey that stretches across more than 200 years. It kicks off with a desperate escape from persecution in 17th century France and wraps up on the rugged frontier of Texas. This is the story of one family, the DuBose, and how their incredible resilience helped shape a piece of American history. So, how does that even happen? I mean, this isn't just a family tree. It's a map of survival. We're going to follow the DuBose family's path across oceans and centuries, and you'll see how these huge historical events, like religious wars and westward expansion, are really built from the choices and the struggles of individual families, one by one.
Okay, so to really understand why the DuBose family would leave everything they ever knew behind, we first have to get a handle on who they were and the world they were living in.
Right, so the DuBose family were Huguenots. In simple terms, they were French Protestants. In a France that was overwhelmingly Catholic, their Calvinist faith made them a target for all sorts of discrimination and, outright violence. Now, this wasn't some sudden crisis. It was more like a slow, deliberate squeeze. For almost a century, the rights that Protestants had were just systematically stripped away. It all came to a head with these brutal dragonades where the government would force soldiers to live in Protestant homes just to terrorize them into converting. And then finally, in 1685, the king revokes the Edict of Nantes, making their faith totally illegal. At that point, staying was just not an option.
So fleeing this persecution, our story's main characters, Isaac DuBose and his wife Suzanne Cuyando, they looked across the Atlantic. They were searching for a place in the Americas where they could finally practice their faith in peace.
They eventually arrived in Carolina. And they weren't alone. They joined a whole wave of fellow refugees settling along the Santee River. Together, they started this community that became known as French Santee, just determined to build a new life in a brand new world. And this quote, wow, it just says everything, doesn't it? The new world was not the paradise they might have been promised. It was a daily fight to survive against the climate, the disease, and just the immense challenge of building a community from scratch on a raw frontier. But that determination they talked about, it really paid off. The DuBose family didn't just survive in South Carolina, they absolutely thrived, putting down these deep, lasting roots that would anchor them for generations to come. So after Isaac passed away, the family's land and their entire legacy were divided up among their kids, which you can see right here. And this wasn't just some legal formality. This was the moment the DuBose family really planted its flag, making sure their name would be a part of South Carolina for a long, long time. And this is where the transformation is just complete. I mean, think about it. In just a few generations, the DuBoses go from being stateless refugees to becoming foundational pillars of a new nation. They were planters, they were community builders, and their descendants even fought as soldiers in the American Revolution, fighting to secure for others the very same freedom their ancestors had crossed an ocean to find. But that restless spirit, it didn't end there. The journey wasn't over. Just like their ancestors crossed an ocean looking for a new start, the DuBose descendants started looking west, towards that ever-expanding American frontier. This slide basically maps out their relentless push to the west. You can literally trace their journey through old records, from South Carolina into Alabama, then on to Mississippi, as each new generation sought its own opportunity on the next frontier. And it was in Texas. That's where the story that started all the way back in Normandy finds its next great chapter, as the family becomes a key part of the state's own founding story. And listen, we're not just talking about a couple of people moving to a new state. The records show the DuBose family and their descendants settling in tons of counties all across Texas, becoming a really integral part of the fabric of early Texas society. Think about that number for a second. Over 200 years. This entire migration westward from Carolina all the way to Texas, it was a slow burn, a journey that unfolded across generations. It's honestly just astounding. From Isaac and Suzanne's single, desperate act of survival, this massive American family tree grew, with literally thousands of documented descendants spreading out across the entire country. The DuBose family story is such a powerful reminder that behind all the big chapters of history, the stories of nations and empires, are the personal, determined journeys of individual families, maybe even one just like yours.